It's Google. Stop me if you've heard this one before. Microsoft messed up big time with the launch of the Xbox One. Microsoft did a U-turn on many of its controversial policies soon after E3, but the damage was done. The PlayStation 4 went on to outsell the Xbox One almost 2-1. Sales don't tell the whole story though. Almost exactly a year ago today, I looked back on Microsoft's original plan for the Xbox One and realized it made a lot of sense. Fortnite, Destiny, Apex Legends, Overwatch, the biggest games of this generation are online only. Online purchases have outstripped sales of physical discs since 2013. Microsoft has used its underdog position to revitalize its image. The launch of the world's most powerful console, the Xbox One X, along with gamer-friendly initiatives like Xbox Game Pass and its embrace of crossplay for titles like Fortnite, has it riding high. Pressure from Xbox and
Hey, welcome to a new video.
permanently alter the way we
In this one, I'm going to be talking about why so many people are bad at fighting games and will never get good at them. And appropriately, I have the Guilty Gear subreddit open because it's pretty bad. So, what really set me off to make this video was I can't find the post anymore. I really tried to find it, but I can't find it anymore. It was a guy who was talking about his this session that he had. He was saying that he had a really good session. He learned a lot. He applied what he'd been learning, and he had some really good back and forth and blah, 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 like how good the session was. And I was thinking like, okay, that's cool, whatever. Like, it's good to hear that, right? And then I kept reading, and he just kind of mentioned casually that the session was 5 matches. So this is the key thing to me of why people are bad and don't get good, is that they think 5 matches is good. They think that that's a lot. It's not. That's like 20 minutes tops, probably 10 to 15 minutes, I would guess. Well, 5. Yeah, probably like 20-ish minutes. That's not, if you have a kid, if you're really, really busy and you just don't have a lot of time to play games, that's fine. Like, I'm not trying to like shame people for not wasting a bunch of time playing a video game. That's not what I'm doing. But if you're playing a fighting game and your goal is actually to get good, if you're just playing casually, like, do whatever you want. It doesn't matter, right? If you just say, I'm playing this game to have fun, I don't care if I ever get good, I just want to play with my friends, that's totally cool and valid, and you're free to do that. But what you see a lot on the subreddit is like everyone, I mean, some people are cool with what kind of hat does Johnny wear. Like, people are into that kind of shit. Like, I couldn't give 2 shits about that. I also couldn't give 2 shits about like when people post like anime porn drawings in here, like this thing. Like, that's why some people are into this game, is because of stuff like this. Like, I just don't give 2 shits about that. Like, oh, I drew Alpha. Like, who cares? But that's just, there's 2 different populations that play this game. I'm talking about people who actually want to get good, or tell themselves they want to get good. If you want to get good, you need to prioritize. So, like, first of all, don't tell yourself you don't have time to play. Because if you want to get good, you just have to like prioritize it into your schedule. So if you literally only have 4 hours of free time a day, probably you shouldn't ever even play this game, right? Because when are you gonna play, and what are you gonna prioritize over? Like, what are you gonna cancel out of your priorities so that you can play Guilty Gear? Is it gonna be spending time with your friends, exercising or whatever? Like, you know, if you only have very limited free time, you probably aren't gonna have time to get good at this game. Maybe you can, if you can play like an extended session on the weekend or something, that's totally. Hi, welcome to a new video. This is going to be talking about how important it is to lose a lot and how to learn from losing. Really though, like, I just want to talk about how I got into fighting games and how I learned that myself. I want to get in a little bit about how I how I approach the game, or any fighting game, and why I approach it like that, and also why I make the videos that I do make. Like I've mentioned it before, but like, my brain is broken, and I really have to teach stuff sometimes. Like, I was a teacher for a while, and I'm not anymore because it's like the worst. It would be the ideal job for me, but because teaching is so bad in the US, it's like the worst job in the world, which is unfortunate. But yeah, I really just, you know, when I was trying to learn fighting games, it sucked. Like, I couldn't, there was no way to learn properly before YouTube and all that kind of stuff. So I'm doing these videos the way that I'm doing them because, you know, I was reading like the Guilty Gear subreddit, and it just really pisses me off. Most people don't actually want to learn, and, you know, I'm doing these videos for the people who actually want to learn, not for the people who want to watch a video of like some really slick video that makes them feel like they learned but didn't actually learn anything. So I'm just gonna talk like my whole fighting game life story, basically. Okay, so I started out like in 2nd grade. I think Street Fighter 2 came out on the SNES, or maybe 1st grade, and like, I didn't really like it that much. The thing was, like, at that time, fighting games were really mainstream. It was the biggest kind of genre that people played on the consoles and arcade.
This is just a quick disclaimer for this particular episode. Scouting is one of the most complex aspects of the game. This is by no means a complete roadmap to absolute perfect scouting every time. A huge part of scouting comes from experience, playing the game, getting better, learning to understand and see builds. Sometimes you have to face a build 10, 15, 20 times to be able to pick it up and figure out what's triggering that particular play. So, just a quick disclaimer to let everybody know that scouting is not perfect, never will be, but this should give you a very good guideline of what to look for. With that out of the way, my name is Filter Starcraft, and we are back for episode number 7 of my Bronze to Master series. This particular episode is going to deal with two things. It's going to deal with scouting and map control. Scouting and map control are two very important aspects to StarCraft 2. I feel the map control is one of the most overlooked parts of the game. It can make a huge difference between winning and losing. Scouting is probably the most overrated aspect of the game. It's still really important, but you're never going to be able to pick up exactly what your opponent's doing based entirely on the information you get from scouting him. Sometimes he's just bad, sometimes he'll do something weird, sometimes he'll spend all his chrono on probes, but still 4-gate you. Yeah, it comes a little bit later, but you don't expect it. One thing I've kind of noticed on a lot of my videos, there's a lot of comments where people are asking questions about scouting. There's even a few people that are having a hard time understanding that I can win games without scouting. So I'm starting to see those comments. This video should hopefully help address a lot of those. The one thing I do want to say is if you are in the Bronze League, if you are in the Silver League, if you are in the Gold League, you realistically don't need to worry too much about putting a lot of effort into your scouting. It's okay to scout and have it in your mind of what you might be looking for, but if you put more of your focus there and you mess up other parts of your play, scouting doesn't benefit you at all. You're going to find two different things in the description for this video compared to the old ones. First one's my Twitter account. I'm going to retroactively add that to all my videos. If you want to ask me questions, that's definitely the best place to do it. I don't particularly like how with the way YouTube comments work, every time I answer a question it shows up in the uploader comments. It's kind of takes away from what other people are saying. So hit me up on Twitter if you want to ask me questions. If you do type stuff in the comments, hey, awesome, go ahead. I still read them. I'm still going to respond to the ones that have questions, but I would just prefer it if you could do it on Twitter. The second thing that I'm going to have here is the notes for the different ways I'm going to scout in this particular video. So the notes that I'm going to use to create a description for you are going to be in the description for the video. If you want to add them to a notepad or print them out and keep them handy, whatever, hey, go ahead, awesome. That's what they're there for. I want to try to give you as many tools as I possibly can to get better at the game. For those of you that don't know, I record my videos in two ways. When I play games, I record live commentary. When I'm not playing games and I'm trying to teach, what I do is record different parts of it individually so I can go back and change, get rid of parts where I don't feel like I make a very clear point. So with that being said, I actually had to scrap this, the first attempt at this particular video. It just wasn't up to par. I didn't make any real clear points and I wasn't happy with the production. So I've had to go back, redo all my notes. Hopefully this one's really good and a lot more clear. So with that in mind, the last video was me playing Gold League players using my Gold League video tactics, where I was not taking a third and I wasn't scouting. I'm going to add those two aspects into the Platinum videos. Now, these are going to be in split parts. The reason that I have to split them up is simply because it'd be too long and too much of an information-based video to really do anybody any good. I feel it's done best if I split up the parts. So I'm going to split up the two different parts here. Now the advantage to that that's really cool is when I go to play the games, out of race, doesn't matter if it's Terran, if it's Protoss, if it's Zerg, all I do is just scout the natural, see if there's an expansion. Sometimes Protoss go Nexus first, that kind of stuff. Then I scout up through the main to check the gases, and then typically I'll leave the base and I'll do a couple different things depending on the race. When I play against Terran, things are a little bit different because you can't always get up the ramp, but I'm going to explain that a little bit later on here. Again, I want to overemphasize this. Nothing is ever perfect. You're never going to find a scout guide that's going to tell you exactly what the Protoss is doing 100% of the time based on what his chrono boost is at. Yes, it's a good indicator, it's something to look at. There's a lot of different things you can take a look at to try to get a feel for his build, but it's never perfect. So that means you don't want to do two things. You don't want to overreact to it. You don't want to go, oh, I know for sure he's doing DTs and then throw like 50 turrets everywhere, or he's going Cloak Banshee and then have like 10 turrets everywhere. Because what happens is if he doesn't go Cloak Banshee and his build's just bad, it'll catch you off guard with something else. So scouting is never perfect. Make sure you remember that. First major point I want to touch on for basic scouting, and I'll get into a little bit more detail about the types of groups for the different races, but just as we're doing with our buildings, we're not following a strict, stringent, I put this down at this time build order. There's a lot of flexibility in what we can do. We can go for tanks, we can go for bio, we can go for whatever, it doesn't really matter. It's quite easy with our basic building pattern. Now, you just have to apply that to scouting as well. When you do go scout his base, you want to make sure you're checking and putting things into groups of what he could be doing. You never want to try to pinpoint exactly what he's doing, because that's only going to lead you to trouble. A really good example of that is if a Protoss player has double gas really early, that could either mean he's going for Dark Templar, that could mean he's going for a Void Ray Stalker all in, it could mean he's going for Blink Stalker. There's a whole bunch of things. Even a Sentry Expand is completely possible, so you don't want to stop your SCV production, you don't want to make 50 turrets to try to defend the DTs or anything like that, but what you do want to do is cover your bases where you can for that particular build. In terms of timing and when you should be going out to scout, I don't change my scout time based on the map or based on the race I'm playing against. Yes, there's certain situations where that's beneficial, but I like to just keep a nice even keel with the way I play. So what I do is I scout after I make my barracks when I'm doing my 1 racks fast expand. If I scout after my barracks, most of the time I can get into a Protoss base. Almost all the time I can get into a Zerg base unless he's going for something that's really aggressive. And with Terran, usually I actually don't get into his base, but I can tell a lot and get a lot of information from what his barracks looks like. So again, I just scout after my barracks. You're going to see it in the background video. One of the most commonly overlooked aspects of scouting is getting your SCV out in time to do what's called an expansion check. The expansion check is just pulling your SCV off to the side, maybe to his third, maybe a little bit further out of the way, so that around 6 minutes you can go in and check on his expansion. There's a couple of reasons this works really, really well. The first one is against Protoss. If he hasn't expanded by then, he's probably doing a 1 base all in, or he's bad. The second thing about that is when you do go back into a Zerg base to scout, typically if you can get to the mineral line, you can see how many drones he has. That's a really good indication of if he's doing some sort of crazy baneling all in or not at around the 7-minute mark. So again, you just want to keep your SCV. If you can pull it off to the side, that's awesome. When I talk about each race, I'm also going to talk about the effectiveness of using scans to figure out exactly what he's doing. Scans can be a great tool, but if you overuse them, you're going to get in a little bit of trouble. When you are in the lower leagues and you want to just kind of burn a scan and make sure you want to avoid the mineral line as much as possible, go behind it and check both his gas. Based on his gas and his gas timings, you can gather a lot of information about what he's trying to accomplish with this build. If you just kind of poke in and see a gateway and a pylon and then leave and you kind of know where he is, you're not figuring out any information that's going to be of any use to you. You know he built a gateway, great. Every single Protoss in the game does that unless they're kind of rushing you, which can be bad, but hey, you'll figure that out really quick. The other thing you want to try to do is just count his workers and see if he's still making them. This is a pretty cool way to figure out if maybe there's something hidden or kind of stuff. If you go into a Terran's base and you only see like 9 or 10 workers and the other guy's not just bad, assuming he's a player, there's a pretty good chance you have a proxy outside your base, and that proxy could be a whole wide range of things. So definitely check the workers, make sure it looks fairly normal, and check the gas, see how many he's taken. I'm going to start talking about Protoss here. Again, remember, this is not perfect. This doesn't account for another player being bad. This doesn't account for another player trying to throw you off the scent of what he's really trying to do. But it should give you a pretty good indication of most things. So when you are scouting a Protoss, what you want to do is count his pylons. If you look in his base and you only see 2 pylons and his chrono boost is extremely high, try to hang around a little bit till his cybernetics core is done. If you can catch him chrono boosting his cybernetics core and he only has 2 pylons in his base, there's a really good chance it's a 4-gate. That being said, I have seen players that have made 4 or 5 pylons in their own base when they are 4-gating, so it doesn't necessarily cut it out. But as players get better and you start playing against better opponents, counting pylons is a really good way to adapt. Now the more complicated one is Nexus. See what the chrono boost is like and try to get a cybernetic score. If he's not going to chrono a cybernetic core, or you see a double chrono go off, chances are it's some sort of void ray all in. Now there's always a chance that he's bad and he's doing something else and he's just forgetting to use chrono boost. I've seen that tons and tons of times too. So the other things you want to be aware of are potential DT rush. DT rush can be really devastating to everything you're trying to do. The other thing is a blink all in. The blink all in is probably the most dangerous of the 3 builds when we're dealing with what we're trying to do here, because we're going to have a lot of Marines really quickly. That's going to deal with any kind of void ray all in fairly easily. We're going to have that bunker up at the front, which is also going to help against the void ray all in. Blink stalkers are just going to avoid that and bounce right into our main. So again, it's really, really important that we go back and check to see if he's expanded, as well as check around our base for a proxy to pressure you. A lot of times he'll just walk straight across the map and you can go right up into his base and see everything he's doing with your SCV. What I like to do is send my SCV in and around 6:30. So you can go from 6 minutes to 6:30. I usually go at about 6:30 because I can get a really good scout. Usually a second stalker is already halfway across the map by the time that SCV gets there. But it's really important to check for his